Hey, we're live for week 106 of the Draw or Die newsletter for artists of all kinds. I am DJ Kaufman, professional cartoonist for over 25 years. This week, I'm going to tackle the question that I get asked the most out there: how to make money from 4-panel comics. How do you go about making money from your 4-panel comics? I'm going to fly through that today, and we're going to get right into it right now. So if you're joining live, I just sent out the newsletter to the list. Welcome. Thanks for joining. You can put your questions in the comments or the chat. So yeah, this is the question that I get asked the most, and I've repeated over and over again: how to make money from 4-panel comics. Danny, the artist over on Instagram, actually prompted this week's topic because he said, big fan. I was curious how one would make money from a 4-panel comic. I love the concept, but don't quite understand the process. So that's exactly what I wanted to talk about today, is the process of making money with your comics. I draw along with ArtNut, doing fine today. Happy Easter. Decided to do week 106 live here on the YouTube stream. David, Dan, how you doing? See, the email just came out to the big list at 12:40. It's 12:41. We're getting into this topic today, one of the big ones that I talk about a lot, and I'm going to just jump right into that and start talking for you guys. But week 106, how to make money from your 4-panel comics. So topic number one is, first, I got to say, if your whole purpose is just to make money, you're not going to succeed. You need this first. You got to love it deeply. You have to love drawing comics. You have to love the craft of it, the act of it, inking, all the hard stuff that comes with it. It's not about the style that you have. I've seen people that make money with their comics that have all different types of styles. And really, that's the first part of the recipe, is you got to love it deeply. You got to love the process, because there's going to be long nights. There's going to be times where it's hard to do any of that. Hey, Based Art Department, how's it going? Talking about the tough question this week: how to make money from 4-panel comics. Some tough love in this one, really, in this topic this week. So you gotta love it deeply. Don't worry about the money first. If you don't actually love it, people will feel it. You gotta love that act of creating and the craft of it. So this is the real recipe for success in comics. And you can take it or leave it. For me, I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've made money from my own comics, from commercial comics, and I'm going to talk about a lot of that right here in this next couple of videos that I'm going to do. So if you have any questions, you can also put them in the chat. I'll scan back at the end. Anything that I'm saying that you want to know more about, please drop down in there, or the comments if you're rewatching. So the first way is the main way that people make money with their comics, and you just go your own way, the do-it-yourself approach. But in order to do that correctly, you have to do 3 things: be authentic, be consistent, and know your topic. So let's just rewind here for a second, because those are tied in. I'll just zoom in on each one of these bullet points. This is much different than writing the newsletter, by the way, because I'd usually be actually writing out the text, and now I'm just kind of just spitballing it live. So I can't take anything back that I say. It's kind of dangerous. So stay tuned for that. So be authentic. What I mean by that is, there's a lot of people that are just like, they don't mean to be fronting, but they think like, oh, I'm just going to put up a comic and just start trying to sell stuff right away, right? It's just not going to work. Being who you really are is one of the hardest things. We talked about that in the last video, but really getting comfortable with yourself and not pretending to be someone that you're not. So don't pretend to be, this hot shot, comic book artist or something like that. You want to make sure that you're being authentic to who you are, telling your real story. If you're just starting out and this is your first comic or something like that, then it's great to tell people that so that they know you're not trying to put on this front. Like I've seen people put things on credit cards and like run around to comic book shows, and like everybody else that's kind of in the artist alleys, we're like, oh man, that guy's fronting, like we know it's fake. And if we know it's fake, your people that are passing by are pretty gonna get that vibe from you that like this cartoonist probably, or this publisher is not going to be here in a week or a month or something like that. So, but when you are authentic and you find out who you really are and you know that, be consistent. So you hear that over and over again, putting out consistent product. I'm guilty of starting things and not finishing them like most artists, because you go through all those stages where something comes up and you just don't, you don't follow through with finishing it. It was one of my hardest things. I wrote about that in one of the newsletters, was starting so many things and not finishing it, right? I hate that. It's just not going to work for you unless you actually commit to being consistent. This last bullet point of this little chapter is know your topic. So knowing your topic means more than, if you know your topic, you're going to know your audience. Now, what am I going to talk about that? How am I going to explain that to you? Well, we have a artist in the group named Maddie Comics, brilliant cartoonist, wonderful guy. Turns out, he's been kind of hammering the superhero vein for quite a while, like kind of Marvel Comics fan art, stuff like that. And I told him, I said, and him and some other artists that I talked to, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. And he said, well, he's dealing with chronic illness. And I said, well, do you realize that you're a mirror? And when I say that is like something that you know and that you're dealing with, it doesn't always have to be a problem, but people love problems, right? If you're dealing with a problem and you know that problem pretty well, then you know that topic and you know all about it. It could be that, pregnant mothers or single moms, or maybe you're from a dysfunctional family or something like that. That could be a problem. Or it could just be a happy thing. Maybe you just really like hockey and it's like a passion that you like. You like to make podcasts. I would definitely tell people to avoid, especially in comics, avoid comics about comics. You could say like, well, that's the thing that you really love. Anything but that. There's been so many comics about comics and things like that. It's just not really going to vibe, and you're limiting your audience. So when you know your topic, then you're going to know your audience, because you are the audience, right? It's that mirror that we talked about. And that can be different things for different people, but those are the three main keys to the recipe that you got to lay down that foundation before you're ever going to be able to make a dime from your comic. Okay. And that's where we're getting at here. We're going to go back and we're going to answer these questions. This question, how to make money from your 4-panel comic. You got to love it first. Don't forget the money. You have to love drawing day in and day out. The main question to ask yourself is, would you still draw comics even if you didn't have to worry about money? For me, the answer is yes. I'd probably draw more or do whatever I wanted all the time. I don't think there's ever going to be a day where I'm not thinking about visual storytelling and telling a story, because it's just built inside of me, right? Know your audience, know your topic, all that stuff. The follow-up to that is usually, well, DJ, where do I publish? Where do I publish my comics? How do I do it? And I would say just go watch my Future of Comics video. It's a little bit long. It's back a year ago, like where I was like really putting a lot of work into those videos, but it's still a good video. And it's going to show you exactly what I think personally where you should put your comics. But in a nutshell, this is the funnel everywhere. So you're going to want to publish your work as many places as you possibly can, right? With the caveat of, you don't own any of these places. You don't own Instagram. You don't own Twitter. You don't own all these social platforms that you own. You don't even really own your own website. I've seen people put, as a matter of fact, friend George Broderick just reached out to me and said like, hey, do you know a way to like massively put all of your comics back because the website went down or something broke with an old WordPress install for him? So he has like hundreds and hundreds of comics that are broken now because some plugin broke. That sucks, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket, but also post everywhere. You want people to know that you exist. So if you picture this really terrible funnel that I drew here, it's a funnel. and at the top of the funnel is everywhere. So you're putting your work out and hoping that somewhere in that everywhere, the right people are going to find that comic and go, "Oh, that's interesting. Like this is interesting. It's a comic about gardening or something like that, some topic that they're vibing with." On socials, I suggest doing like live streams on Instagram or wherever because people are rolling in and out of those things. They might not be live watching you. Like right now we have 11 people, but there's people coming in and out of a live stream constantly. And like you never know who that live stream is going to get served to. So live streams are a really awesome way to be at the top of that funnel and be discoverable. And the algorithms out there right now are really going to push your live streams to people that it thinks likes your stuff, right? Or they like the topic that you're talking about. So where's that funnel to? All of that stuff is going to funnel to the call to action isn't to buy something. It should be to join your list, to own your own list. Because just like I said, even with a YouTube channel or something like that, we don't have your email addresses. We don't have any of that information. Like you can't take that with you if your channel gets shut down or any of these socials get shut down. I suggest substack.com. That's a free way that you could start building a newsletter list. And you can actually start publishing your comics on Substack as well. So you could say to your fans, hey, if you're really liking this comic about gardening, well, sign up for my Substack. That's a good way to support me. It's free. I'm going to batch all the comics from this week and put them out on like a weekend stream for you or a weekend post for you. And you get them to come in there. Now, I use Fourth Wall as well. So I use Substack for my main newsletter, and I use Fourth Wall and we'll get into this in a little bit, for my merch and for my membership. So Fourth Wall can kind of be like the Patreon sort of thing. And this is a good time to tell you for Substack, if you're not on the newsletter list for Draw or Die, get on drawordie.club. And that's the main list. So sometimes I'll put out some special things just for that list. And we have 103 or over 100 weeks of content there, whether it's video or a lot of newsletter stuff. All kinds of issues that artists are dealing with are on drawordie.club, and it's all free. Somebody get you on that list, right? Now, with that said, all of that, so we're halfway there. The big goal for you is to get to what you would call 1,000 true fans. And again, this is just a big goal. This is like a shot in the dark, big goal. Not a whole lot of people that I know, or even myself, ever really managed to get to 1,000 true fans. And what exactly does 1,000 true fans mean? So here's my definition of a true fan. What is a true fan? They engage with 80% of your content. So they might not see all of your content, especially with the way that the algorithms work and things like that. But you see their names 80% of the time. They're commenting, they're liking things. You know who they are. The second part to that is that they're willing to spend about $100 a year annually with you. That could be divvied up in multiple ways. That could be a couple t-shirts for $25. That could be a poster. Something to think about for true fans is, who are you a true fan of? Who do you spend more than $100 with? It could be a band. I know I've got a couple bands behind me, artists that I support and that I vibe with. Who would you do that with, right? So you're a true fan of something. I can almost guarantee it. It could be sports or whatever. So that's the definition of a true fan. And that's all well and good, but how though, right? How do you build true fans for your comics? Yeah, Demon X said in the chat, even 100 true fans is a dream. That's right. That 1,000 true fans thing, that's awesome for a goal. And I'm going to tell you, I'll get into it a little bit here, but brick by brick. So if every single one of those bricks in the wall is a true fan, you're just building your true fan base, right? You're identifying them, and when you see them, we'll get into that in a second of how you can do that. I have a little exercise for you to do. Brick by brick. Just think of it like that. You're building a wall and you're out there with no money, but you just got these bricks, right? That you're building one by one. Number 2 is go the extra mile. So after you have identified someone that's coming in, you see them a lot, why not reach out to them? And you know what? It's good that you might have like 10 people that you're like, okay, I think I have 10 true fans. Then you know them by name, and you can actually engage with them on a level that you'll never be able to do when it's 10,000 fans, right? So I know some, more well-to-do creators who just can't give that level of connection anymore. They want to, but they just can't, right? It's really hard for them to have that personal touch. So at this stage in the game, it's all about personal touch as far as like going that extra mile, offering them something. Maybe you're just like sending them a nice message. It doesn't always have to be monetary, but um, uh, we also call it like the Taylor Swift effect kind of thing too. That's how she started to build up her fan base early on. Pearl Jam did it. One of my favorite bands, like Pearl Jam, used to like send out random things. They're too big now, but they used to send out random things to their 10 club. Show up, do what you promise. So when those true fans expect you to show up, you have to keep showing up and do what you promise. And if you can't show up, you just need to let them know. Don't just ghost them and just like vanish. Just say like, hey guys, it's not really going to jive. Like this is what's going on. I can't do it this week, whatever. Don't leave them hanging, because when you do have true fans and you don't show up, then they're worried about you. They're like, is everything okay? The comic didn't come out today. Or like, this happened to me recently whenever like last week or the week before, the newsletter didn't come out right on time. And like, I got some messages that said like, hey, is everything okay? Like, is everything going all right? And I'm like, no, it's fine. I'm just doing something a little bit different. It's taking a little longer. It'll be out. No problem. Right. So that feels good to know that like you're missed. Right. But you might not have that right away. It's okay. You're starting at zero. You're going to just build that brick by brick by brick. Right. It's the whole point here. Now, I'm going to give you a way to test this. And first, I'm going to say like the best ways to start monetizing after you've done all of that. So hopefully you've done everything we talked about. You love it. You're being authentic. You're being consistent. You know your topic. You know your audience. You're really dialed in on that gardening comic, building up that awesome. There's an audience there. You're like rocking it. You're the comic strip. You're the 4-panel comic strip of the gardening world, right? Or something like that. You're publishing it everywhere. You're building your list up. You've got a handful of people on that list. Maybe shoot small for 25 at first or something like that. Just build it in increments. You're aiming for the true fans and you're on a mission. You're publishing consistently. So now the best ways to monetize are print on demand and memberships. Print on demand, you're going to want to keep your costs low. I would say print on demand, but also keep it special. So put out something that's kind of limited. If it's a sticker or a t-shirt, there's all kinds of things that you can do with print on demand right now. This is a great way to test the demand part of it, right? So you don't want to just put up print on demand and be like, it's there forever. Who cares, right? Make it special, make it limited, something like that. Just mess around with it a little bit. With that technology, you could put up a different shirt every week if you wanted to. You just got to put the work in, right? So print on demand, but special, and memberships. So, people will often do Patreon or Fourth Wall. This is a good little test to see. I use Fourth Wall. It's not as robust as Patreon features, but Fourth Wall lets me have my merch directly connected to my membership. There's a lot of good things about fourthwall.com that I like. I've got my daily drawing club there. Join the daily drawing club. And we have our print on demand merch, but then we're also able to sell our notebooks and things like that, and the hats. Like we sell our own merch directly through Fourth Wall. We have to do our own shipping for the items that we're putting out, like our stickers and stuff. But we can have those things married together, and there's no overhead price like a Shopify or something like that. So that's pretty nice. Not sponsored by Fourth Wall, by the way. I'm just saying it's a pretty decent service. It's served us pretty well. Then direct merch. So like I just said, actually I just skipped that. We put out some stickers. We put out some hats. I like to print locally when I can. So we deal with a local screen printer in Pittsburgh. We got our hats made from the local printer, and our sketchbooks are made locally as well. So I just like to support the local economy when I can. This is premium price testing, and this is the test to kind of see if do you have true fans, right? This is a test, and it's only a test. So don't judge if you make any sales on this at all based on if you're good enough. You're putting out a test. You've done all those things. You put out your comic. You've been consistent. And now you're doing a premium price test. And I'm going to show you how to do that and keep your costs as low as possible. And what you're trying to do with this premium price test is identify some of your true fans, so that you can start putting a separate list together of like, these are the people that I think are actual true fans. Like they're buying for me all the time. They're always there for me. And those are the ones that you really want to like protect and really help, right? Like you want to, or build a relationship with in some way. So this is how we're going to do that. You're going to make 100 prints at $50. Now, originally I had the premium price at $100, which I'm still kind of for, but $50 is a little bit more reasonable because, you know, people will go out and spend on a dinner for two and it's going to be like $80, $90. So like supporting an artist with a limited print, $50, it's reasonable. And this is a rough math alert. So rough math alert time. I want you to go watch the 29-cent print video that I have on my channel, 29-cent art prints. It's still 29 cents. And, you know, hey, listen, I know that there's people that want to ship to Australia and the UK and stuff like that. Yes, they will, but it's going to cost you more to print or to ship them. Okay. So I've even baked that in a little bit into this figuring of like, let's just say it's $45 to get your 100, you know, your 100 prints made, 11 by 17. They're great art prints. They're awesome. So $45 give or take is what it's going to cost you overhead wise. Even with buying some like well, you're not like include the shipping in this, right? And if you were to say shipping was included, then your shipping, etc., usually it's about 15% of your retail price if you've done it right. So 15% of $50 is about $7.50 just baked in, rough math to ship, right? For a print rolled up in a tube, you know, through standard shipping, you know, locally. This is just a test, right? This is an example. So now say you've done that and you've put that out and you've said, this is limited, 100 of these. You're supporting the comic. You're supporting my work. Goal, you want to sell 100, right? And if you did do that, well then, you know, with only $50 overhead and a little bit of time and like going to the post office and stuff like that, you've made about $4,500 profit, let's say $4,000 profit. You know, there's no way that costs you $1,000 in shipping to send out 100 prints, right? So you've made that. That's the ideal best case scenario. You sold them all. Great. Chances are that's not going to happen. Chances are that is not going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then you have to say, well, if you don't, you've ID'd some of your true fans. You may have ID'd like 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, right? You've ID'd the people and you've not spent a lot of money to do that. You've gone like, oh, I sold 20 of these prints, right, to these people. And like one person bought 2 or 3 and I know their name. I see them pop up all the time. So you're going to have those learnings. Like in my last video last week, we talked about there's no failing. There's only like learning. So you might go like, well, maybe I'm not ready yet. Like maybe my audience isn't deep enough, or I don't really have that connection yet from my comic. So it's the learnings are going to be different for everybody, depending on your comic, depending on your audience, depending on your consistency. Going back to, and by the way, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I'm going to do like a question answer session at the very end. So Demon X, I'll come back to you on the Patreon question there. Go back to the finish, go back to the start. So if you haven't sold that, you're going to follow this line and go all the way back to the recipe and ask yourself and be real. Are you being authentic? Are you being consistent? Do you actually know your topic? Are you doing those things? Because chances are, whenever I'm talking to an artist and they're asking me and they're like, I've been doing it, I've been putting on, I go check out their stuff and they're not. They're just not doing it. They're barely showing up. They're doing the bare minimum, and it's just not enough. The bare minimum is just not enough to do it when you're going your own way. Okay? So you have to double check yourself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. And you know, it's hard to be honest with yourself. I could say like a numerous comics that I've had didn't go right because I was like, you know, I was still toying with, I didn't know my audience. Who was this really speaking to? Those are all things that you have to keep reviewing for yourself and really kind of going back. It's a cycle, you see, like if you're not making money, you got to go like, did you enjoy that process? Right? did the money get you down? Like, oh, I haven't made any money off this comic. I hate this shit. Right. Well, then you never really loved it deeply, because I've done comics where I didn't make nothing. Right. And, but I still loved it. I still loved the craft of it. It was depressing. It could be depressing when you're putting so much work in and then nothing's, you feel like nobody's caring or nothing's happening. But then if you have that vibe about yourself and you're showing up that way, people don't want to hang out with a Debbie Downer or a bare minimum Bob. Lola said no bare minimum Bobs. That's right. And this is tough. I don't want to get into a fight with young artists that are like, I don't understand, man. I'm doing everything that you said and it's still not working. And I just check out one little thing on their social and I'm like, oh man, I don't even want to get into this with you. Like, clearly you're not doing it. You're not being authentic with yourself and figuring out, all these things. Because this is the recipe. It works. I've done it in the past. I do it now. It works for sure. So, all that said, you do that little test. It doesn't have to be prints, by the way. You could put out something else. You might put out a sticker. We have our friend Dan that puts out the his Chubble Gum stickers and things like that. A lot of people put out, random things like, hey, I got 25 stickers. Who wants them for $5? Don't do a cheap product though. I'll say that. Like, you're trying to identify, do you have true fans, right? You're trying to identify that. Who's willing to spend more than $100 per year with you? So if they bought a $50 print, you're halfway there. If that same person buys a $25 shirt and a couple stickers and they've spent $50 on your shop, you can put them in a special bucket and say like, okay, I think this person's a true fan and I want to hook them up with something special, right? I know that they're there, they're supporting me. This is something that you have to keep track of. And I guess that's kind of the overarching point too, is that it's tough. It's tough to make money from a comic. It doesn't just naturally happen itself. You can check my other video here on the site or on the channel about the business side of art. There's a lot you have to do, keeping track of the taxes and the receipts and stuff like that. It's something that artists don't want to do, right? You don't want to advertise. You don't want to market yourself. You don't want to ask, but you just want the money to show up magically. And it's just not going to happen because you're just focused on one aspect of it. Whenever it's tough to do it yourself, but it's possible. It is 1,000% possible to do. That said, if you're new to this channel, please subscribe. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the newsletter, because next week, I'm going to go over, it's too much to go over in one video. We're 28 minutes in here on the live stream. Next time, I'm going to talk about commercial comics, and that's getting paid by brands or getting paid by personal brand comics. I don't mean your personal brand. I mean somebody else is paying you to draw their brand about their business or themselves. So personal brand comics. I've done this as well. So I'm going to show you exactly how that could work. A lot of that is tied to you're out there. Your work is out there because you've been doing all of that and they see you, right? Had I not done all of that, then I wouldn't get these opportunities over in the commercial side. So next week it'll be about commercial comics. And even, now I have a full-time job again doing comics for VeeFriends, Gary Vaynerchuk. But I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have that full-time job had I not been doing all of those things in the past and doing commercial work. So that's going to be in week 107 video newsletter. That's next Sunday right here on the channel. So if there's any questions, you can put them in the chat. I've got a couple things that came in. Number one was from Demon X. What should one offer on Patreon as a beginner? I would just say don't offer too much on Patreon as a beginner. I would say make sure that you are saying that the Patreon is just a way to support you in the comic. So if you do those other things where you're like, you have a comic, it has a good vibe to it, you're being authentic, and you're putting your work out there, and then you're like, hey, here's this way of supporting this comic, $5 a month or something like that, then doing that. Don't get too embroiled in, that's a big mistake a lot of artists make. I made it too, where you're like, I want to bring this value and I want to do all these extra things. And then suddenly you feel this pressure to deliver all those things. Just say, hey, you're helping me. Maybe they get to see the comic before the public does. They get to see it first, kind of thing. That's probably a really great way to start. And then add on and figure out what the actual audience is asking for. So in our case with Draw or Die brand, which is not a comic, people were like, hey, where's your merch? Like, can you put out some stickers? Can you put out some notebooks? And so then we did, but we would listen to the audience to find out what they wanted, right? Listen to your people. If nobody's asking for a t-shirt or no one's asking for anything from you, like stickers wise, then you just got to shoot your shot and say like, hey, would anyone like this? You put it out, print on demand, and see if it goes. And if it doesn't, then you're back in this test. You're back in this test cycle. Like you're going to go through print on demand, memberships, direct merch, do a premium price test occasionally, and then tally up your true fans and go like, okay, are we building? How many more bricks in the wall are there, right? That's kind of what you want to do with that. Okay, that's this week's topic. Next week, I'm going to dive into the commercial comics topic. And again, this is, by the way, before I leave, this is not a full comic book thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about 4-panel comics here. I'm talking about, let me just go in here and show you what I'm talking about. Here is a whole slew of a business comic that I drew over the last summer. This was for a CEO of a staffing agency, and we did B2B comics for his LinkedIn, and I got paid to draw these. So I had to do some likeness work, things like that. I had to write the strip and do all that stuff, but I got paid to draw these comics for that. So I'm going to dive more into that next week, but that's what I'm talking about. 4-panel comics, nothing extreme like an 80-page graphic novel or anything like that. I'll hang tight here for just a second to see if there's any more questions from the chat. But hopefully I've answered a little bit about how to make money with your 4-panel comics, because Danny, I hope this answered your question, because he loved the concept, but he didn't quite understand the process. And I know that process that I just showed, it's a lot of work, but if you really love it, it's worth it. So that has been week 106 of the Draw or Die newsletter. I hope that you're doing well. I hope you stay encouraged out there. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the newsletter, join our daily drawing club, all that. Have a great Easter, and I'll see you guys real soon. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.